brilliant. When we put this AGM together, we anticipated maybe a handful of people would even click on the link or consider coming along. So to see some familiar faces and some new faces is absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much for coming along. We do have obviously very limited amount of boarding AGM stuff to cover at some point in the evening. Mine's on my hands, so that's how much I would talk about. But first, we want to sort of run through and have introductions from people, because there are new faces in the room, there are familiar ones, but I haven't caught up with lots of people for ages, so it'd be lovely to hear what sort of projects you're involved in, what might have brought you here today. Please, at the end, there will be a chance to share any events and anything you're doing that you want to sort of promote to people, so we ask you to hold that back until later on, but sort of focus more about what brought you here, why might you want to get connected with people, and the important things to share. Then we're going to talk about a project idea that we've been mulling over, and I think lots of people have been mulling over for a long time. I want to sort of get that moving and happening again, and expanding on what's been done in the past, and seeing where you guys feel the gaps might be in this project idea. Then we'll run through the boarding bit, which we overdone very quickly. And then we'll have more general discussion. We've got the space until what time tonight, anyone?
10 o'clock.
10. So you can bring your drinks back up if you want, but we've got plenty of time to chat, network, because that's really the benefit of coming to something like this, is seeing who's here and going, I don't know them, I want to go and have a conversation with them, or hearing a bit of the project. There's paper around on the table as well. That might be for later, that might be for now. If there's something you want to write down, you haven't got pen, paper, rip a piece off, use a colourful pen, there's loads of them dotted around. The paper's there to be used. We will be gathering stuff on it later maybe, but it's more like the fact it's there, so don't just think, oh, there's a blank piece of paper, I want to gather that person's name or that project. Just rip a bit off, write it on there, and go and have a chat with them later. So, I'm not going to start with myself in introductions, because that is boring and I hear my voice enough in the day. So I'm going to start random. Pat. I'm not going to start with Pat. That's unfair. I'm going to start with yourself. I recognise you. I don't have to remember your name. What way should we go around the room, guys, afterwards? Okay. Well, not really. So we'll follow around the room. That's okay. So again, you've got 3 minutes, roughly each. 2 minutes. This is getting meaner. So if you want to give your extra minute or 2 minutes over to somebody else, feel free. If you don't want to talk in a big group and you're nervous at all, please don't feel pressured, just pass it over. Maybe just tell us how you heard about this meeting today and what brought you here. But if you don't want to talk, please don't feel pressured, just pass over and on to somebody else. Who's going to keep a rough idea on timing? Mike, okay, brilliant. So just Mike's going to stare at you if you happen to be going too long. So that's brilliant.
Tony Cook, I'm from Cardiff Community Energy. We're looking to put community-funded solar PV onto public buildings around Cardiff. Can't give you detail yet, but there should be something this summer.
I'm Roxanne. I'm here representing Repair Cafe Wales. I'm also a student at Repair Cafe Wales. I'm also a student at Cardiff University, and I'm doing the research on transition house, so this is very interesting for me to just have a look at what's happening.
I'm Keris, and myself and Joe, away Joe, set up Repair Cafe Wales in January last year, and Repair Cafe Wales in January last year, and then started with one cafe last year, and I have a handful, and I think we've met for benefit. I think there's some synergies between our organisation and yours.
Do you mind saying, I think you've got a minute left. What is a repair?
Repair Cafe Wales. So we fix people's things free.
Yeah.
So you could do it on the toaster, anything. So we'll fix them for free. So it's about using manager and community together and sharing skills.
And there's a cafe there as well?
There is also a cafe there.
And where is it?
So this one is Taste, but we have in Range Town. We have one in Slot, Philly, Rumley, I've forgotten the last one.
Enough.
Enough.
Starting.
Yeah.
Spots. You said spots.
Yeah.
Cafe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so you repair anything?
We have very certainly
Yeah, great.
It's brilliant. Having followed you guys, it's absolutely brilliant what who they took together.
So hi everyone, my name is Sophia Cassidy and I've seen this event on Facebook and it caught my attention. I think because are you Michelle?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Are you Alice?
No, Sophia.
It's quite soft over here. It's probably, I can't hear it.
Yeah, I've got quite a soft voice and I don't really get my voice that much, but it caught my attention because of the Rome culture group.
Yes.
So yeah, so I thought to come along and ask some questions and get a bit more of an idea. I moved to Cardiff 5 years ago and I was working at a vegetarian restaurant full time. I really loved it. I got to work alongside my friends and I could do yoga and meditation practice because it was a Christian cafe. And at the time I was looking to start my own business and I wasn't too sure, I didn't have much idea about business. And now I work from home and I have an online business. So I show people how to make money from home. And yeah, that's about it.
Hi, I'm Mary Duckett. I've been aware of the transition movement and this network for a little while, although unfortunately not kind of involved directly, but I've just come to support the work that the group do because I think it's very excellent and the associated groups as well. So, I just wanted to say thank you for what you do. Also, as an aside, I work for Cardiff Third Sector Council and we're an infrastructure support organisation for the third sector, so I brought a few different bits of information in case people would like to. Cardiff Third Sector Council, so we're an infrastructure support organisation for the third sector and community groups, so we do good governance, training, funding support. Bearing in mind we're a small organisation, we have a lot of advice and information available online. Our third sector development team are always really, really keen to meet with individuals and groups to support you through the processes in order to achieve the good work and things that you do with the community. So, and we also have the Cardiff Volunteer Centre as well, which is a place to promote volunteering opportunities and generate engagement into your work as well. So EBED and the Volunteer Centre team can support with kind of good practice and training around managing volunteers as well as different schemes for youth volunteering and things like that, and also promoting your volunteering opportunities on the internet because it's like a key place that people do searches that are independently looking for volunteering. So it's just some information, but mostly just to say thank you for everything you do.
My name is Jorge. I've been in Cardiff for the last 5 years, and I think I tried to contact you a few times just to go to have a give a hand in Cardiff Repair Cafe, something like that. Yes. Jose Torres, you have seen me maybe on Facebook. I think I sent you an email or something like that talking about. I've been trying to go so many times, but for different reasons I couldn't go. So maybe next time I'll try again. I'm studying environment in Cardiff Open University, and I'm also an engineer. And I'm trying to contact with people in Cardiff who have my same, taste about agriculture, about different movement, because there's some groups in Spain where I come from. One of them is called, the same name is called Going in Transición or Mala in Transición, which is a group of people I think similar to this group we have here this afternoon. I have so many projects in mind. I have properties in Spain, so I'm trying to do something sustainable. The problem we have in Spain is that we have a lot of corruption, just to let you know. I think you hear about that. And any project you have in mind is always stuck by the political, of the government. So it's quite difficult to make any project in Spain. I've been thinking to buy a piece of land here in this area, maybe not Cardiff, it's quite expensive now, but maybe in the area of 30 miles around, and try to build a house with a straw bale. So yeah, somebody laughing there. Yeah, so I have so many things in mind. I think it's just moving the project I've been thinking to do in Spain, which is now my city or where I was living is very touristic area. So it's quite difficult to do what I want to do in there because sooner or later I will be surrounded by hotels or too much concrete. So many projects in mind. I need to take contact with people and try to join people to learn and then teach them what I know. So that's why I'm here. I want to thank you as well to all people here because I think we can share so many interesting things today. So thank you.
Barbara Williams, and we've covered the
Yeah, I'm Harold Williams. Barbara and I are beekeepers. We represent Cardiff, the Valley and the Vale beekeepers, and we are in fact managers of a training apiary that is situated in Dufferin Gardens. Now that's where any aspiring beekeeper can actually get hands-on before they commit themselves to the purchase of equipment because it is not cheap beekeeping, believe me. But of course, we do give a training session. We have the theory and then it's the practical that is most important because we have had one or two that when it comes to actually opening a hive of bees and the height of the season when there's anything like 60 to 90,000 bees per colony, one or two have decided to save stamps instead or something like that. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but our aim is to support the pollinators of the world and we're in contact with schools to get them into it. Ely, Howell Gardens, Havildar School, they've started it, so we're shepherding them along a bit. And we have been involved with the bees that are on top of the shopping mall in Cardiff there. So we're really into it and we can give people a lot of help if they require it.
What was the organisation called again, please?
Sorry?
What was the organisation called?
It's called Cardiff, the Vale and the Valleys Beekeeping.
Barbara, did you used to have a store when you were at the Riverside Market? Am I right?
Sorry?
Did you used to have a store at Riverside Market?
I used to have a store, yeah. Don't do it now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been beekeepers for something like 40 years now, so we're really well into it.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tim. I saw this event advertised on Carpe Diem. I run a couple of small businesses around in Cardiff and Caerphilly. I'm just looking at more ways of how I can be more active in the community, really, so just looking for inspiration. So, came along. But it's more because of what he's got to say.
What are your businesses?
I run a pet services company and I'm a yoga teacher. So, a bit of a mix.
Hi, my name's Dwayne. I came with Tim because I'm trying to set up a lobbying group for something I'm particularly passionate about. It's a bit taboo, so if you want to know about it, we can talk about it later. It's probably not best to bring it up in polite conversation. So yeah, just interested to know about your own journeys and how you got off the ground.
Oh, fascinating.
Using the right marketing tactics.
That's good marketing.
Hi, I'm Anne Howard. I am here with you and my business partner Kate Knowles. She and I have set up we're setting up a social enterprise to run an old building on Adamstown as a co-working space, providing different types of space. So there's like a ceramic studio, there's desk space. There's part that we hope to use for sort of sustainability and food purposes, but not sure what yet. I'm also one of the directors of Riverside Sourdough, so I'm also really interested in like local food, sort of pathways and stuff like that.
You underplayed Foxlane.
Oh.
Totally underplayed it. It's amazing. I've been following their story on Facebook mainly, and the whole development is amazing how they come together and created this collective space. I think it's well worth checking it out on Facebook if you get a chance.
Yeah, I suppose what I want to say is part of our aim of that is it's not just we want to foster different sort of maybe networks that might not otherwise people might not otherwise be
What's it called? It's called One Fox Lane. That's its address as well.
One Fox.
I like it. Yeah, okay. I'm used to talking. I'm Sam. I run my own company, Egg Seeds. I'm also the treasurer of Cardiff Transition. So I started a journey many years ago to try and see if I could create an economy, a job using transition principles, and Egg Seeds kind of was my idea of what I wanted to give back to the community and what I wanted to, the method in which I wanted to achieve the changes and stuff that I wish to see out there. So I was talking to Steve earlier, and one of my main things is sort of I want to do meaningful action, and I do a lot of skills learning and training, working a lot these days with youth and community. And my business sort of evolves and thrives in the education sector, in the community sector, youth areas. But one of the main things I found is being involved in many networks has helped in sharing those knowledges to the groups and the people, the individuals who don't seem to be represented there. So I notice there's people around the room, faces I recognise and some I don't, which is great. But there's even more out there I've been seeing on social media that sort of need to be connected. So I'm really keen for us to find excuses and reasons to come together more often to sort of to share stuff that's happening. I'm not going to be here to promote my business and stuff, so I'll leave that. You can check me out on social media or have a conversation another time. But my main thing is to support others out there. There are projects and things to support groups who want to do sustainable activity through Renew Wales. They've got scope to support you and assist you. If you've got a sustainable project and you want it to develop through the business side, you've got Enterprising Solutions. They've got a project out there for so many years as well to support. There's a lot of different organisations that can support you, so if you've got ideas, you're not sure where to start, maybe I can point you into some of the right places to start looking. So that's it.
Yeah, no, we are my team, we are 3 volunteers, and we're working right now with Michelle, who invited us to come here. We are from France, Spain and Germany, and yeah, we are always interested in exchange. Our organization is called Roofing. I don't know whether you have probably know it, and the workplace, so yeah, and yeah, we're happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Monique Wahid. I'm actually the area manager for Islamic Relief. I recognise a few faces. We have a big shop on City Road. We have a pound shop located in Splot. I have a newly opened one in Newport, and we also have a furniture shop as well. Besides the charity, we, and my right hand here, Sophia, who's one of the shop managers, we do a lot of work within the community. We open projects in the evening for asylum seekers. We give clothes, shoes, toiletries, because the first 6 weeks when they enter, they don't get any support other than the house that they put in. So one of our main things is to help them be comfortable when they just arrive. We do a lot of recycling projects within house, books, electronics. You would actually be surprised the amount of stuff that we get coming through the door. So I guess we're here today to say, come, if you need anything, yeah, take it.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle, so there's a couple of things I'm doing, have been doing. Been developing along with wonderful volunteers a permaculture site for 20 years now. It's possibly one of the most well-developed permaculture sites in the whole of South Wales. I developed it with the idea of trying to get as many vegetables and fruits and nuts for the household, to sort of develop my skills and other people's skills with how you deal with surpluses. I also developed it as a demonstration garden so that people could come and learn and visit me and learn about permaculture and how all that works. And I also run a business called Edible Landscaping, which is an education and design business, where I teach how to design edible gardens and also design edible gardens. And then recently I created with two other people a community interest company called Upfront Gardens, which we've been active in for a few years now. And the idea behind Upfront Gardens is to create connections within streets, to create conversations, to create friendliness between neighbours through via the idea of developing your front garden. So it's really that way round. It is about, you know, making more of your front garden, improving the streetscape. But it's the impetus for it is actually really to create a neighbourhood project, a street project, where people sort of come together and get together over their front gardens, and that becomes a way of interchange, a way of social connection. So that's what I've been doing. That's it. That's me.
Hello, my name's Mike. I'm involved in transition as well, on and off since 2012. And I guess my route into transition was that at university I studied sustainability in Exeter, and so obviously transition was coming into fruition at that time around the UK, and I connected up with Cardiff Transition back then. And I work out of the Sustainable Studio, which you may or may not have heard of, which is down on Dumbles Road. I work as a filmmaker there. And yeah, I've been interested in working with transition just because I'm really interested in working at community level on things, because I think it's important in terms of just connecting with the people around you to make things happen. And that's why it's amazing to see people here today from such a wide mix of different projects and places. And it's great to have everyone here.
My name's Cam, and I've just got involved with an organisation called Sustainable Life, which supports climate change activists, so they can send people to the UN climate change conferences. So and I'm trying to do some fundraising work, so I just started thinking about it, and I kind of wanted to be able to talk to some people here about how to get that going.
My name is William Owen. I live in Riverside. Basically, I've always been interested in sort of, sustainability, things like that. And within Riverside, it's sort of quite a whole area. And I think ultimately, instead of actually sitting around and wondering when someone's going to do something, I suppose these days you've got to sort of get up and do it yourself now. So I've seen things starting to happen around the city. So Grangetown, Growth, they seem to have communities there that are starting to get organised. So it'd be nice to sort of bring that sort of experience to Riverside and sort of try and find out what people are doing, how it's working, and then doing something within Riverside itself. So basically been talking to various people. There's a little group of people, and I think it just needs something sort of to gel together. And then basically we were talking, I mean, there's one thing where you kind of need to set something up where you have an incorporated group that turns into a charity, I think it is. Basically, so you have your treasurer and your secretary and things like that. And then that way you can then start looking for funding and things like that. So really sort of doing that through maybe the sort of Keep Wales Tidy sort of model. And then when we can sort of start that up, then hopefully then you can start sort of coming up with other projects, things like that. So like for example, there's a garden, their gardens could come into fruition as say maybe a community garden, for example. So and then just looking at all sorts of other things like looking at maybe improving the streetscape in the Riverside area, because I think the council only really sort of listens to people when they actually sort of stand up and say, hey, you're making this area in town look really nice, but what about our area? So until people actually start standing up for themselves within their areas, I don't think things actually get done. So Yeah, so if anyone lives in or near Riverside or wants to head about, yeah, so there's something that's happening in Riverside in 2 days' time.
There's normally the positive thing of what you're saying.
Yeah.
In Riverside, there's a lot of people who are activists and keen, so there's a great
There
chance
is.
to connect.
Yeah.
More. And Lewis is right next to you from it. So.
Oh, there you go. But this is it. There seems to be lots of disparate groups who do their own little things, but then it's a case of sort of bringing it all together as maybe, the sum of the parts is
Common theme of tonight.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
So we're into here.
That's what I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Bruce. I was chair of Cardiff Transition at the moment. I've been volunteering at Riverside Community Garden, which is not really very central to Riverside, it is Riverside Community Garden. I also do green woodworking up there and various other projects to do with making stuff, craft skills, growing vegetables, cooking. I don't know, lots of stuff. Oh yeah, we got libraries as well. Waterways too, yes. Many different projects. But mostly around Riverside or something.
I'm Claudine and I'm trying to make an online library for Cardiff Transition. And I used to be one. Hi, Nicholas.
Hi.
I'm Pat. I live in Fairwater. I've been involved with Cardiff Transition for a long time. I remember the first meeting we was here quite a few years ago. And I haven't been so involved. One of the things that I've been involved with more is Cardiff Activist Cafe, which was set up as a partnership between Cardiff Transition and Cardiff People's Assembly. And the idea would be that it would be a regular place for people from across activism, people who wanted to make positive changes, whether they were involved in environmental, in political parties, in social justice movements, to come together and talk about ideas and reflect on their own experience of change and what would help them get more involved. So that runs, we've run it for about a year, we've had a bit of a break, and we're going to start again in April on the fourth Wednesday of the month in the Wyndham Street Centre, but we'll be putting that up. So we've got a Facebook group, Activist Cafe. I'm also involved with, there's a bunch of us, the Roundhouse Project, and I was thinking particularly what Jose was saying. We wanted to buy some land and live there and grow things, and it was very difficult getting the planning permission to do both. So in the end, about 5 years ago, we've got a small woodland and a 2-acre field where we've got an orchard planted. So we're at the moment rethinking the structure that we're going to have that, so that we can simplify it, because we just set it up and then we found that it was complicated the way we set it up. But we are going to be hoping to open that out to activities and also looking for people to become members of that. So that's the Roundhouse Project. And the bunch of us who couldn't live in the co-housing project, there's a bunch of us moved to Fairwater. In Fairwater we've set up a gardeners group and we've set up Fairwater Connections. And we're kind of working towards doing things, so it's really interesting hearing about the projects like the workspace and the other things that people are doing in locality. Very much the transition idea of doing something where you live and figuring out how to just engage all the people who live there in a way that's useful and sustainable. And I'm also going to be involved in the Sustainable Life Project.
Thank you. I am Joe O'Mahony. I'm one of the co-founders of Repair Cafe Wales, so I won't repeat what Gareth and Roxanne have already said. There are 3 things I wanted to add though. First is that we help people set up repair cafes as well as running our own. So if you're interested in setting up a repair cafe, which is a place where people fix things free of charge and exchange skills, we'd be more than happy to help. The second thing is that it was Kerith's idea, in the repair cafes we're going to start doing seed swaps and seedling swaps. So if anyone has green fingers, do get in contact. I realise there's many of them around, but we thought it was another service we could offer. And I guess the big thing, the reason why we're here is that there's obviously, we can make more of a difference than simply starting up lots of repair cafes. And we want to connect with as many environmental groups in Cardiff as possible to make a difference, because it seems to me that you turn every corner and there's a wonderful, motivated organisation with environmental credentials, but nobody knows they exist, and we don't work together to make change happen. And I think transition is a wonderful place to be able to do that, and I'm hoping that we can do that here.
I'm Luke Farmer. I'm a software engineer, a full-time software engineer. I moved to Cardiff about 6-7 months ago. And when I was relocating, I was looking at different community projects to be involved with. I came across Repair Cafe. It was in its early days. I joined initially as a repairer, and I've kind of seen it grow and flourish, and just been overwhelmed really with how charitable some people who attend repair cafes are. Both the people who are offering skills and the people who are coming to bring stuff to be repaired. It's just brilliant to see that community come together, people kind of share their experience and stories. It's been really, really nice to be part of. Yeah, just to add, I'm now part of the committee, so I'm doing what I can in my spare time to help us grow. Because I know, as Joe said, there's plenty more we can do, especially if we all link up as separate community ventures. So it's pretty good to be part of.
Hi, I'm Steve Garrett. I think I might have been at that first transition meeting. Got distracted, and it's great to reconnect. It is really so encouraging to see everything else that's going on. My interest has always been social enterprise, local food, and sustainability, and how to sort of link them together. So Riverside Market is 20th anniversary this year, which is kind of scary. But we now have we have 3 weekly markets, 3 weekly farmers markets. I helped set up an organic farm, which is 8 miles outside of Cardiff, which is doing okay. It does a box scheme, delivers to 50-odd families in Cardiff. We also were around in the early days of the community garden, various spin-offs. But now I'm sort of, I was saying to Sam, it's been interesting raising a son. He's now 15, which means that he absolutely doesn't really want to spend time with his dad anymore. So I seem to have sudden time. And so I've been appointed the coordinator for Renew Wales in Cardiff, this area, which I'm really pleased about. Also, I teach a course for the university on how to set up a social enterprise. And the deal is, if a community group contacts the, and I'll give you the details of who to contact, contacts the university, they provide me, basically, or someone else, you know, because I'm the best. Free, you know, so the university has this outreach program where they do free training for community groups, and I've really enjoyed that. I've been working in the valleys, I've worked in St. Mellons, I've worked in Ely, I've worked in, and you know, for me, small localized businesses are almost always about sustainability, because that's the very nature of small, you know, businesses meeting local needs is a lot more sustainable than people going to work for some anonymous corporation, you know. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I'm Jo. I work as an artist, but I also started at Art Shell, which is an arts organisation. We've got a social remit, and we don't generally work outside galleries and make work around geography and history of the place. So for the last sort of 3-4 years, we've been looking particularly at waterways. My own personal work, I've been looking at waterways more than that, but we a few years ago got some funding from Lottery to map the waterways of Cardiff. And so we spent a year, we were very much involved in that, and we spent a year mapping the waterways of Cardiff and looking at where they were and where they are now and what's happened in between, so the sort of changes that have happened to them. I'm quite a visual person, I'm not so good with words, so I have got some visual things as well. But so I'm still doing that. I'm still looking at the moment in much more detail the waterways, and it's sort of developed into something around very much. It's very Cardiff based. It's very local, so we work quite locally. because living in the area and working, I think that's sort of, you're very well placed then to sort of know what's going on, and I think that's sort of in the transition ethos too. So working at the moment with fibres, looking at plant fibres and how they could be used, working with a coder, a botanist and a weaver to look at ways that we can use plant fibres from around the waterways, looking at materials that are in our area, in our locality that can be turned into fabric materials potentially. So it's a R&D project, so it might work, but we're trying to find out.
In my Japanese not reading something.
That would be useful, wouldn't it? Yeah, no, it'd be great. It'd be good to look at things that are problems and turn into something useful.
Yeah. My name's Richard Berry. Known Sam for a while. When we were a very young man. I've been around for a while. I got involved, I've worked in the arts, basically, community arts. Theatre and education, youth theatre, you know, it's what my wife calls the social service end of the arts. Theatre, you know, you can imagine what I get up to. I'm sort of semi-retired, but over the years I've been involved with some interesting community organisations in Cardiff. I got involved with the Cardiff City Farm back in the 1970s, which of course the land there became incredibly expensive and the county council moved in and swept us away and put American supermarkets on it. It was community land. It was let with and droves. It was old drovers' land, in fact, where the cattle would be driven from West Wales through, and they would be, that's where they would be watered and fed before they were moved on to the bigger cities. And when the Cardiff City Farm folded, I was bereft, because you know, I asked people about it and they said, well, what did it mean to you, the Cardiff City Farm? It was a rough old dive of a place in the days before health and safety came along to ruin things, you know. I saw pictures of people, some photographs of some kids on the roof of the barn on a seesaw, you know, they made themselves. Don't get that nowadays. But when it died, I thought, oh, this is terrible. But of course, nothing dies, and that's the great thing. And I saw people move on, move out, try new things, Amelia Trust Farm, Riverside Market, all sorts of people developing projects, getting involved. And I think my reason for being here tonight is to do what we've just done. It's fascinating. It's a wonderful, wonderful jigsaw of wonderful, beautiful things. And if we can join up, great. Let's keep going. Let's do more of this.
Okay. So it's kind of gone full circle there, but we've had some latecomers, so we've got some extras. So apologies. What we're doing is a quick 2-3 minutes maximum of what sort of brought you here. If there's something you're involved in or you're trying to connect with or something like that, if you don't want to speak, just pass. But it's equally, and I know Nigel's just left the room, he's coming back in a couple of minutes, so you two are going to, one of you are going to have to start from.
I would say I'm just here because I'm interested, just new one of them. So I'll say that and pass.
Are you doing new coding? Have you got an event coming up for you?
Yeah. I don't know if that's really transition. But,
yes, I had advertised the hottest co-working spaces in Cardiff as well.
Yeah, I did that too. Yeah, it's if anyone knows where Fox Lane is, so this I guess Sangha is already noticed that.
No.
Yeah, so I'll have a coding night on Thursday. Yeah. So I got the idea. I don't know if people know about the NHS hack days that happen. So it's they happen all around the country. And
sorry, could you say again?
NHS hack days.
Hack.
Yeah. Hack is in hacking, coding, programming. So those days they're quite cool. That's a huge thing, and they bring together people from the NHS with software developers to try and solve problems that the NHS has in different areas. So I attended that in Cardiff this year, and I just found it actually really interesting to get different people together talking about solving different issues through programming, and also the aspect of you're learning from each other there as well. So I thought it would be great to have that on a more regular basis. and knowing that there's this cool space in on Fox Lane. So I'm gonna do it once this month, and then if it works well, do it like every month going forward. So, can you chat to me about that?
So I've been involved with Orchard Cardiff. And many people have heard of Orchard Cardiff. I'm my name, Haida. Haida? Yeah. So I don't know if many people know about Orchard Cardiff. Heard about it? So it's just a group of people who meet and harvest other people's trees, fruit trees in the city. And then volunteers get some, and then they give the rest to community, cafes, or groups, organizations, all that kind of stuff. So I've been involved as a volunteer, and last season I was kind of running it. But it definitely needs more people and more volunteers, and if anyone's interested, you can like the Facebook page and show interest. And I'm also a photographer, so I'm doing this photo project, which I think is kind of matching the Cardiff Transition values, which is I'd like to meet the more specifically just women who kind of, while living in the city, they kind of connect to nature, so go foraging or wild swimming and things like that, kind of still find these green spaces in town and reconnect to themselves and keep the balance in the modern life. And, so if you're interested in being part of it, could you come to me and talk to me, please? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll go in 1 second. Boris, do you want to speak? No? Kind of ease on, it's all about this connectedness and projects and trying to stop it from being all in your head. So, Cardiff Transition, a few years ago now, wants to start to make connections with projects and groups and organisations, because there's a lot of energy in people, there's a lot of passion, they want to do something, but they don't know where to start. Or they've got all this passion and they're just going to get everything running off the ground, but they don't realise there's already something happening down the street, which they could be involved in and save a lot of energy and a lot of sort of wasted time. So we started a project as volunteers doing this, as you do when you're just passionate about something, called Sustainable Cardiff. It's great recently, there's a new venture called Sustainable Cardiff that's just launched as well from Hungry City Hippie, is it? Am I correct in that? So she started a different Facebook group called Sustainable Cardiff. But we have a map called Sustainable Cardiff and a page. But there's a key concept of again, which is coming out from projects and organisations, is people don't know what's going on. So here we started mapping. It's not a physical map, it really is an online map. You click and there's information and stuff like that. But it's out of date in some part, where organisations have changed addresses, phone numbers, collapsed or reformed, changed names. But there's so much activity, and collectively, as volunteers, as part of Cardiff Transition, we knew more about what was going on than the third sector organisations that represent the third sector, not being rude to CFSC or know that, but we had a database from WCVA. Now they represent third sector in Wales, yet we knew more about what was happening in this city from a handful of people in a room, because we're active and passionate and connecting with people, meeting and talking with those others, than they did. And then we started sharing that map out at that time, and C3SC were amazing. They put it on their environmental page, and they said it took it from the least viewed page to the most viewed page in their website. It shows you that people want to connect, they want to start sharing, they want to save that energy. And it's not saying there's one person doing it down the road, don't set up a new project. Absolutely, if your project's slightly different or you want to do it differently, that's fine too. It's not being precious about what you do or what somebody else does or feeling the competition. It's just about sharing to let people know that this is also going on. Because there's an amazing amount of goodwill, good energy in this room and outside. Again, not represented here. A project similar to Islamic Relief, a project like Boomerang Cardiff. Anyone been watching them? Yeah. The guy's crazy on his videos. But what energy and passion he has I don't say I know him personally, I don't know what he's like as a guy, a person, but what they're trying to do, grassroots, is really impressive and get things out to people who need stuff freely. Now, they are looking at a project to connect people again, bridging the gap, I think, or something like that, or boomerang bridge, and it's these project ideas that people are all saying the same thing. We should connect more, we should communicate more, we should know what's going on, and it's always the same. So, over the last year, Mike and in fact Sally have been talking and stuff, and Paulus has been there as well, talking about the idea of a mapping project again. Not that it hasn't been done before, but refreshing it, bringing it in a new way, trying to keep it also part trendy, but trying to then bring in some energy, maybe bringing in some funding, bringing in somebody who can commit to keeping those connections going. Because what we've realised in trying to keep this going, or update it, or to connect with people, is it takes a lot of energy. And over time, you do get burnt out when you're a volunteer. And then you take a step back, and then you come back into it, and you take a step back, and you come back into it. And those who've been doing it for longer than I have understand there's like a journey, and it's sometimes the roller coaster is very deep, and you don't come back onto the same track. There we go, I'm going to get you talking in a second, Nigel.
Sam, while you've got the floor, could you just, there's quite a few people here that haven't come here before, and I'm possibly speaking for myself, just in terms of what transition is,
okay,
saying.
No, I will come back to the sort of the project idea in a second. I'll get Mike to that. First of all, before I do that, I'm happy to do that. Nigel, everybody around the room, you're the only one who hasn't sort of had a chance, has sort of said two minutes of what brought them here, what sort of things they're involved in, and kind of the connective side of it.
Probably been involved with Cardiff Transition possibly about 6 or 5 years now. I did all the social media for Threat Free Wales. I now am a campaign officer for the Woodlands Trust. I've been involved with sustainability and sharing it and promoting it in Cardiff as much as possible, generally through social media. Generally believing that if people don't know what's going on, they're not going to turn up or they're not going to be connected. Badgering politics and councillors as much as I can. To get sustainability onto the agenda. That's about it, really.
That's about it, okay. So I like moving around because I've got a bad back, and standing still is not good for me. So, for those who sort of haven't been to any of our meetings before, I'm going to speak from my views of what Cardiff Transition is, and it may not always be reflected in what everybody else's views are, because we are a collective, but equally we all have our own selves and we all see things slightly differently. But Cardiff Transition to me is not a group that you're a member of and go, I'm a part of Cardiff Transition and that's what I do and I go. It's a movement of people like this, like-minded. Every one of your projects you talked about, in my mind, is part of Cardiff Transition. And it's not trying to say, hey, you're all mine kind of thing, or you're all of ours kind of stuff. That's not what that's about. It's about saying you're all trying to do positive change or think about it. You've started that journey. So I used to explain it using the Hungry Caterpillar. That's my sort of story of going to. And I do lots of stuff with random caterpillars and building caterpillar climbing frames, all those other stuff. But it's kind of that journey we all go on. So the transition journey is that we use our resources, we use our things in our community for ourselves, for our own personal gain. We get like food in the Hungry Caterpillar. We go on eating and using, and then suddenly we start doing it on a grander scale as we get bigger and more active. Especially as adults, we have more facilitation ability to sort of go out there, go on planes, go on bigger journeys, get this bigger stuff, buy. And the transition movement is kind of the bit that comes next when you go, wait a second, this doesn't feel like we can continue doing this. There's something not quite right in all of that I do, or all of these things that I see out there in society. And the transition movement is those people who've hit that phase and gone, actually maybe I need to look at what I do, maybe I need to look at what the community does, or what the organisations do, and then the bit that transition doesn't do, it doesn't try to say it has the answers, it's this. It's all of the collective different things that happen out there to try and work out how to make something positive happen in your community. And for me, it's been a personal journey. I've gone into employment and self-employment and successfully done that. I've helped out lots of different community groups. This is a personal journey for me. And I keep doing that because that's what drives me. I love that. My passion to help people. Other people have done other things, like Pat, Lewis and Nigel have got the land. They've gone looking into sharing land and doing practical projects that they believe in. And other people then go on to set up a project and move away from maybe the core group, but are still doing amazing things. And we have that sort of personal connection over the years, where we've managed to keep it all going. But it's about trying to do positive things which will make a difference in our lives, in our communities' lives, and realising that if we just do it as an individual, we're not really going to tackle the world's problems on our own, and realising that we need to share it, we need to do things with others or connect with other groups to achieve the results we want to do, if not just to keep ourselves going when we're sort of fighting a good fight. And connecting with others and doing projects is important to us, but Cardiff Transition, I think, has evolved now to realise, although we love doing projects and love running things individually or being part of a project individually, as a movement, as a core group of us, which there isn't many, we'd love more people to come on, ideas, share and stuff like that, but as a core group, we realise that it is important for us to connect others who are doing stuff and make sure other people know what is going on. So we are trying to make sure that we can facilitate that. We're not trying to take ownership over what people do, we just want to connect it and let other people know about it and maybe do some projects with it. So that's kind of, does that answer what we are, what we're not? I don't know. That's my personal view. Well, that's something that Paulos and Mike didn't even mention. Without them this year, a lot of activities come from these guys, and anyone else who's been involved, apologies if I haven't mentioned it. Nigel has been tweeting and badgering people from Cardiff Transition, keeping the Twitter alive, keeping the Facebook alive. But these guys secretly have been trying to go, a website went down, let's get another website up and make people a chance to connect. So these guys are really trying to push that forwards, but they can't do it on their own.
Are you funded by Transition globally, or do you have to apply for
funded? I love that word. I'm quite good at getting funding in, but we haven't yet done that in Cardiff Transition. So we got to that phase last year, at this point last time, have been constituted for the first time since 2008, 2009 when we started. So now we're properly constituted. Bizarrely, we never needed it before. But to get funding, to get certain things in, we needed to be. And so now we've done that. We've got a bank account. We have been running a project, so we've been part of Renew Wales, as Steve has joined in the coordinator. I'm a coordinator and mentor, and I believe Pat is still a mentor for Renew Wales as well. And that tries to support people. So Cardiff Transition has been active there. We've been at networks and other things like that, spoke to councils, advised different people on different things. But now we're at that point of, yes, we probably could do with some funding to clarify what we do and get things running. But equally, it's been all on volunteer sort of energy. So,
That's amazing.
Or is it possible for people to apply for funding under the Transition banner?
Many opportunities are out there. We just need to make sure that it is something that there's no clashes. Like lots of organisations, if you all go through the same funding pot for the same kind of project or different things, you've got to make sure it's fair. So I don't believe Cardiff Transition has any issues from my side, personally. The core is here as well. But if you wish to go for funding and you're not quite there, and if you want to come under the Cardiff Transition banner for that, then that would be okay, as long as our insurance and group agree, then that wouldn't be a problem. Pitch it to us. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them. But the mapping idea, the connecting people back together in the projects, is important to me personally. It's a great reference point to look up and see what's going on. But we realise you can't just drive that from a focal point. You need that collective brain again to make it work. The many hands and all that sort of scenario, I'm really good at mixing those kinds of, what do you call that again? Metaphor. I'm really good at mixing my metaphors and feathers and bows and hats and strings and all that kind of stuff. But the kind of concept, if I'm right, in sort of Map Jam was to bring communities together in their community So moving a project around and really getting an idea of what's going on in those spaces. Now there are projects doing this already, and there are projects doing it in different ways. It's not replacing them, it's going, if there's a gap or if there's a need, do we need to try and connect with those groups that are already doing it and join it into something else? Do we need to do it in a different way? Do we need to reach those groups who aren't represented around the table? Yes is the answer to all of these questions, and you know, it needs to happen, and it needs to happen in many different ways, in many different forms. But what's important is it's not just creating a map that is sitting on one website or sitting somewhere. It's about then making sure it goes back out to everybody and say, use it how you can, and get that information shared out to people. That's the project idea. How it comes about hasn't been concreted yet. It can't be concreted.
Is there any end or can I ask questions?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Your check is there.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I've kind of through road for it, I've been sort of thinking about policy for some time. What's the transition stance policy? I was thinking, like, what these projects, I'm really interested in how they can influence policy. I don't know if anybody's explored that or any experience of that. Nigel. Nigel. Talk to you anytime.
I think it's down to how much it's kind of evidence-based and how much you put it into the noses of the councillors that are holding the right portfolios, or putting in front of ministers that are holding the right portfolios. And if you get a lot of that kind of local voice, authentic voice surrounding that project, expounding the virtues of that project and what it's done for that community, I think it's a great way to create change.
Well, for instance, I'm interested very specifically in, in respect to the waterways and having sort of a certain amount of space between river and any building that happens, certain amount of green public space, for instance, you know, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of development around the rivers, around the docks feeder canal, really closely butted up kind of against that section of water. The lot of new built along the Taff, for instance, and just sort of thinking about that, because there's a lot of change happening right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence for the need of green infrastructure between waterways and your cities to act as shelter dams.
Well, there's the Grangetown scheme at the moment, which is really innovative and is great. But it's funny because that's on this side of the river. On the other side, there's the sort of all these big developments happening. So.
That was actually a council initiative, wasn't it?
They're connected to
it's
it all.
mixed,
Yeah, but there's other things happening as well around the river side. This road goes outside of Cardiff, and I think that's important. So many hats and goes to many different things. NRW have done lots of stuff up in like the Taff. I remember going to an event with Nigel about that, and they're realising that flood risks don't just happen at the end. You might flood, we're by the sea, yes, we want to flood because of all the stuff that's happening up the river too. But they're looking now at projects to slow and minimise it as it goes down. But that's not answering the problem. But they're saying there are a lot of stuff happening out there.
It's quite interesting that sort of next step to sort of have, because it's very local, which is great, but I'm thinking how can that be?
I think one of it is that strength of voice. And every time you go to a meeting, I realise that certain people are invited to certain meetings and have certain pieces of work and activity, not because they know more about what's going on or they're connected more with what's going on, but they have a louder voice or they're better connected that way.
Yeah,
and I think, and as a strength in, you want to add something?
No, go on,
yeah, definitely. And a strength to all of this is the more we almost show a united front. I'm not saying we have to agree on everything. The stronger all of these things happen. There are many times, I'm getting well known in different circles, and I get called in for advising on this or talking about that. I got called into Ponty Town Council to talk about allotment and growing strategies. It's randomly, and that's what I'm doing. But it's fine, I'll happily do that. But that's because of random connections and people hear you and back doors and who you know. And I realise that's not fair because sometimes there are better people to do certain things, and it's about understanding who those people are out there. How can I then say, actually, you want to talk to me, you want to go and talk to so-and-so? That's what we need, the stronger awareness of what's going on.
There's a lot of dots to be joined. It's almost like a whole system restoration that we've got to look at. And nothing is separate to anything else. It's all interconnected.
I only wanted to throw in, I don't know if you come across that, I think quite a civic society is setting up some. Well, I mean, there are two things that somebody told me about. One was that they were doing this meetings with the council about, because there's a new transport policy and other city policies that are coming out. And the other is that they're setting up a biodiversity group in Cardiff, so they're much more.
I mean, there's a green paper Cardiff coming out, consultation.
Yes, that's in their consultation.
And I've tried to push for Hugh Thomas Wales to do a public consultancy on it, but very much a round table consultancy on it. Apparently Canol Cymru are meant to be facilitating that now, but I haven't heard about it since. But instead of doing that traditional consultation where you're expected to fill out these long-winded consultation documents with medium capacity of knowledge of specific details, it actually gives you a chance to sit around the table and discuss the documents in a more informal environment and contribute to a document in that way. I'm still waiting to hear from Canol Cymru when that event might be. I almost tried to engineer it for it to be this event, but we didn't want it taken over by that green paper policy document.
I just want to say a little word about networking in my experience. If you're busy doing what you do, it's very difficult to join the dots because there's so many dots. I think what I'm trying to say is that there are different kinds of roles, and one of the reasons that things are happening that other people don't know about is just because we're busy. You know, like, if I network with anybody tonight, it's going to be somebody I can directly work with, where there's going to be a very immediate sort of possibility for collaborating. We're doing the same sort of work. I want to be a part of the bigger picture. That's why this is great to know and to hear about other things that are happening. I want to see the big map and feel there's room for optimism, in spite of all the bad news that we're constantly hearing about. It's not hopeless, all this is really important. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that I can't take on the networking with everybody role. I hope that somebody else will do that. I hope somebody else will be doing advocacy. I'm really pleased that people are able to go to meetings and represent. And I suppose I'm looking for a sort of I want to sort of acknowledge that. So I'm going to work in my little kind of area and be part of the bigger picture. But if somebody's able to take on the coordinating, those sorts of bigger picture roles, that will help us to remain working in our own area, but also still looking for synergies where they're possible.
I mean, if I want to a better word, sustainability is a business. It just happens to be a bit more environmentally friendly. And if you work within that business framework, where you recognise people's attitudes and abilities, and let them excel within those attitudes and abilities, then that business works really well.
I'm just going to throw in one more quick thought. I've been looking at a website, it's a BBC World Service, I think. It's called World Hacks. Now, on that website, there are about 40 little 2-minute videos about people doing phenomenally innovative, crazy businesses that are linked to sustainability. And myself, when I see something that someone else is doing, and I think, my God, I could do that. It's so inspiring. And so, if there was any way that the transition website could have things that could inspire other people, for example, I think that would also be great.
Someone right now without maybe something. Michelle, were you adding something?
Well, I was just going to add, I think really, and I'm sure this is already in Cardiff Transition Course minds, is that I'm really lovely to get a big bit of funding and to go for it, to really go for it. And because I just really think you really worked hard to establish yourself and really in a really great way as a connecting force in Cardiff. And it's undulated, and I've been part of that undulation. But I really think you've got to really grab the bull by its horns right at this moment in time, because I just think it's really a really needed service in Cardiff to, as Steve was saying, for somebody to help make those connections. And I can't see, I'm really full of admiration for the Corps that sort of puts all the volunteering hours in, but I just think, I really think some funding to get some employment, to get somebody employed,
to actually work at those, making those connections is really, really needed, and I just think we should just go for it. Yeah. And I just think also, you know, people like refunding and our funders, they're all about who you connected with, who are your partners, if you're working from a community-led position, all of that stuff, and you are. And you can, they've got so much evidence to say that. You'd be quids in for a funding, you'd be quids in for a grant, you get it. You would.
But that's great. We can't do that without you guys saying you want that.
Yeah, we want it. I want it.
One of the reasons for inviting you all to this meeting is to get your support for this.
Yes.
In front of Mary here, who will know about funding opportunities and will be able to point us in the right direction by
So, in theory, we're going to stop this little bit of conversation and move on, but I'm going to break the rules. I'm not going to look at Lewis for a second. In this conversation that's been happening, I'm glad it's bouncing well through where people feel they can voice as they wish. And if there's people who've got something they want to say and I haven't spotted, please just let us know. But is there anyone already doing this kind of work? Not just saying, yeah, great, we want to see it happen. Is there anything already happening that we need to be aware of? Are there partners out there you think, wait a second, they're doing similar, make sure you connect with them, or have you heard of them? Is there anything that people want to add on the, on the flip side of this?
There are so many different community, constituted, unconstituted community organisations doing amazing things. So, such a range of diversity and richness in Cardiff as well. I can just make kind of an offer in terms of there's a third sector environment network that's secretariated by one of our development officers, and so that could be a facility that you actually use to steer the agenda and draw in the contact and dialogues that you want to have around these issues as an environment networking for the third sector. Also, of course, the development officers can support individual organisations with things like funding applications. I just want to say Open for Community, which is the funder finder online that many of you already are members of, is there's Third Sector Support Wales, which is the kind of network of all the county voluntary councils, which CPSC is one, is changing its use of Open for Communities. We're just about to promote this through C3SC. So it's changing, and there's going to be a gap in the availability of Open for Communities just for a couple of months. So please do your funder finder searches on Open for Communities up until the 31st of March, the 1st of April, okay? Because the new system that will be used by all of TSSW, Third Sector Support Wales, won't be in place for a gap, unfortunately, sorry about that, until the 1st of June, the 31st of May. Okay, so do your funding searches now. And let me know, have your conversations or whatever, but if you want to have a discussion with Wayne, who's the coordinator of the Third Sector Environment Network, to generate engagement in that network and steer the agenda and dialogue of that network as well, then kind of let me know.
So was that Wayne from ECLP Community First Year? Would that happen?
No, yeah.
Okay. That's really good. Is there
Thank you for that.
what in this mapping project, in this connect, what do you want from it? What would be useful to any of you in this project? How is it to connect with others? Is it to see what's happening? Is it the positive stories? Is it what's important about having this sort of mapping project happen?
I think for myself, we have so much to give from our charity, and just to let you know that the projects that we run for the shops, our payees, should I say, Islamic Relief do not fund us. This is a project we set up under the IR banner that we did for ourselves, isn't it? We have put countless funding applications into our employers, and it's a catch-22. We have the council, workers coming asking us for sleeping bags, tents, when they're funded as well. So I mean, whoever we can help, regardless of, you know, I wish you guys all the best in funding, but it just seems to be a vicious circle. You know, and I think sometimes when we just get down to, you know, if somebody can be there to help them and you bring the community, and we've noticed on City Road, you know, our project started where we were just saving clothes that were not able to sell in the shop, wasn't it, and inviting people to come who didn't have anything, people that slept rough on the street. We still have them coming on a daily basis. Again, we work with the council when they have bereavements, we provide them with suits, and you know, we do all this. Then we noticed that the community started coming to us. What can we do? Now we have hairdressers that come in and cut their hair free of charge. We have restaurants that are happy to cook for them, and it's just grown massively, hasn't it? You know, because at one point we were saying, you know, wow, what are we going to do? We need to fund it. Yes, we're doing it ourselves. But then, as I say, when the community stepped in, it just grew from strength to strength, didn't it? And we get so many people asking us, you know, it's nice. You know, one of the reasons we put a pound shop on Clifton Street is primarily because I knew this particular area doesn't have a lot of money. Whatever reasons they've got for you know, how they are, then what we do is what we can't sell into the shop, we then recycle around and we send it to the pound shop. So you can actually go in there and buy designer clothes for £1, and it's nice to see the simple thing, isn't it? Like putting a smile on somebody's face. And there's actually someone that sells second-hand clothes at the end of the street, and she used to come into the shop all the time. Do you remember this? And I was inside, I was saying, what do I do? She used to see me bring the bags in and she would take the pic. And in the end, you know, I spoke to somebody, I said, look, I'm just going to do what I feel right. And I told her, please don't come in my shop. She said, what do you mean? My money's not. I said, but you know, you're actually killing the idea why I put this shop here. You know, I said, you come in, you take the designer stuff, you go 3 blocks down, you sell it for £30–40. I want someone who doesn't have money to come in and buy something for £1. You know, this was my passion, and you know, and it's nice, and yes, it is money at the end of the day that goes to charity, but I want for the community. You know, because again, you know, we take a lot of money in that shop, don't we? Our shop is primarily run by volunteers only that have the key. We have a trust with everyone. We work closely with probation services, so we take all you know, offenders to you know, as long as there's not a risk there, we're happy to take them into our shops. You know, if you ever come into our shops, we get a lot of people that come in and you know, they realise that, you know, one thing I pride myself on is, and I notice here you don't have diversity as much as what you should, and this is very strong. If you come into my shops, you will see somebody who is English, somebody who is a non-Muslim, you'll see Christians in there, because you put the same set together and it won't move. You know, this is the reality. You have to have a mix, because a mix of different ideas, they then broaden what's going to bring in. You know, and yeah.
This is partly, again, one of these decisions are really hard to do, and working in that sector, I understand it's really hard when you have to have those conversations with individuals about what's the real motive why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, as I say, for us, we just carry on, and just, you know, and we see the blessings that come in. If it's done with the right intentions, it will just pour in.
I think
that's my advice.
That community engagement is massive.
Yeah.
And it's so important for any project that happens across Cardiff to have that absolute community engagement and to reach out to that community as much as possible. And never mind what's happening across Cardiff, just engage your immediate community with what you're doing, and it will do well.
Well, it's the most, we realise it's the most powerful tool, isn't it? You know, we want anything, we go out and ask for it. You know, they can come in, anyone can come and see the project working. You know, you've got to have a very strong stomach when you see people queuing outside the shop to come in winter with flip-flops and shorts on because they've just arrived in the country. This is going to set you back. You know, you kind of go back and think, wow, I didn't think this happened in Cardiff, isn't it? There's certain volunteers I cannot put in the shop on a project now because I know they're going to be affected by it. You know?
On the charity point of view, I understand on Monday morning seeing people queuing outside at 8 o'clock in the morning when it's ticking down the rain,
Exactly,
freezing cold, and they want to get in there for food. I understand, and just thank you very much for coming tonight and making sure you said the thing about the diversity in the group as well. Because as a movement, that's sometimes the issue we have around the table is sometimes we have the same faces, and that's not what any of us want, in the sense of, I love seeing everybody, I didn't mean like that. But it is that we know we need to make sure the word gets out there further, and that we're connecting groups and individuals and passions across the board. Sometimes you go for where it's easy and where it's open and that, but we're at that stage that we want to make sure it is picking up those other areas. That's why I mentioned things like Boomerang, because to get into
and helpful peeps as well, they're very,
hands-on, get it done. That's the kind of attitude. Sometimes we need to get it done attitude in people. So, any more thoughts on the project, what you would want from it? Because we're gonna put a funding bit together. We're going to ask for money.
So, I think from my perspective, and possibly from our perspective, because we've talked about this a lot, it's less mapping. It doesn't matter to me whether there's a charity doing something in Grangetown where they're located. The important thing for us, and speaking for Repair Cafe Wales, is what we do with all that information. So this would be incredibly useful for somebody that wants to volunteer. They look at the map, they think, oh, look, I can volunteer. That's fantastic. It's a brilliant resource. But there's various things that if we get together and do them, they'll be more efficient, possibly cheaper, easier to run. So insurance would be one of them. Setting up websites, social media, cross-communication. So if we've got events, can we share? Because each one of us here isn't just representing ourselves. We've got 100 volunteers on our database. If somebody's got a lobbying thing they're trying to achieve, we can send it around our volunteers. So there's a set of things that sit on top of this, or should sit on top of this. You may not have the resource to achieve those now, but you need to be clear about what those things are that you want to achieve. And if you go to funding, to have those as outcomes that you want to deliver. And we're perhaps not going to have all of those deliverables now. If you want help working on those, so my full-time job is I'm a professor of business in the university. So if you want help working on those, I'm really more than happy to work with you.
Thank you. Which university? Because you mentioned Cardiff University. I've got some connection to
Cardiff
Met.
Same as
Cardiff Uni.
Okay,
so just for the video, because my memory and all this information is so overwhelming in many ways, I will be hoping that that video or capturing or sound is working so that it can give me those little bits of,
But send, when you're looking for, I'm sure you'll send some type of communication around and ask for inputs, and perhaps have a shared document online that we can...
Talking about that, very good point. I noticed Paul has brought with him a form with contact information. So if people are willing to keep spreading that around and adding that, keep spreading it around. If you haven't put your name on it, we'd love to make sure, because you're right, it's not just about making people aware of what is going on, it's about that collaborative approach stuff, like the coding. The different hack groups as such out there and trying to tackle real problems. It's about bringing people together to say we're stronger together to answer all these. I hope that's not someone's phrase out there. But it's that kind of thing of actually, as a group, we might have one day a year that we can get together and just tackle something and make something really impressive happen. Or it might not be. It might be more regular. It might be something else. So I think you're right. It's about trying to get those energies together to achieve something they feel is in line with what they want to do. And a map, in that sense, a database, a connector of all of that could be a facilitation tool. And I think that's great that it's been said, it's not just a database of what's going on. You need it to be more useful in that way. It needs to be a tool which you can maybe put in what you want and go, those people are interested too, I'm going to connect with them and sort of just...
In the past, on our website, we've had a running calendar for all events that are happening in Cardiff. It's all well and good having that calendar of events, but unless you disseminate those events to the wider public with continuity professionally, not enough people know that those events are going on or can support them. So basic things like that can prove really useful to the whole network as a whole, but it is almost a professional job. I think I did it for about 9 months voluntarily, and it made a huge difference to the actual presence of transition for a period of time. But that's not sustainable without it being funded.
Absolutely. So this is one of the reasons why we're thinking about doing we're looking for funding for people to pull in the information and disseminate it. But we will need support from all the different individuals as to providing information about what's going on, or at least making it available so that the person who is collecting this stuff and putting it on the website and on the calendar and then sending it knows where to go.
Yeah,
So I think you to tell us where to go.
Linking into what you just said to that, it won't just be about that central body again. We know the most sustainable things now, looking at the blockchain concepts and all these other things, is in a way decentralising the ability. So having a tool which your group of interest can sort of create themselves without going through that coordinator or something like that. But that sounds like a dream of where it would go. It wouldn't be all into one and all out again, but it would be the ability to do all those things. I think that's really something I've just taken on from.
So that when you have your local website around your thing, you include the links.
Yes, of course.
And so forth to make sure that people can see that you're connected into many other things.
Can I just like to reiterate, is it Michelle? I'd really reiterate Michelle's point to be ambitious for your funding. So if you just go ahead saying, we'd like to do a mapping exercise, you get 10 grand, whatever. It's such an amazing organisation with more amazing potential. I really encourage you to do that.
And I'd like to pick up on what you said as well. I think I think the mapping and the calendar and the coordination role and all of that's really great. But I actually think that if you want to be much more proactive and then sort of do what we're doing tonight and start to think more creatively about bringing, creating events, like we did a little bit of that. Didn't we? We had an event in the Butte Park and and good. I'm glad to hear. You asked what you think we should be doing, and I'm suggesting something. So we think it'd be fun to sort of create some events around themes or whatever you want to do, but to sort of create more connected, to be proactive and create connected activities. And you need funding for that. You need quite a bit of funding.
I have to say that I was a little bit struggle looking for information to find group like this before. This is my first meeting. So my question is there any unique platform where all this group of movement, they are all together? Because when you try to find something like this, if you go online, you find information very, very spread. You don't find a group over there or anything.
It is really spread. Everybody's almost working in silence. And I think a lot of it comes down to protected interest and their own fundraising schemes, and everybody's just sitting quite separately. Whereas Transition previously was trying to pick up on all the different activities and disseminate them no matter what they were, as long as they tied into sustainability. Yes, that's not being replicated. That's not actually happening in Cardiff that I'm aware of, and I've got a pretty good radar on it.
There is a map, I'm going to come back. There is a map which says what was out there, about 280 different organisations and groups and individuals and things happening. There is a map, Sustainable Cardiff. It does exist on Open Green Maps. It's a worldwide mapping platform, but that just has some information of what people have allowed to be shared out there. So it's not what you mean. It's not a platform for communication and sharing like that.
Because when there's so many groups around, at the end, everything related with this is quite weak, So we are talking about communication, or to be together. I think it should be a great idea. Someone, I don't know how, create a unique platform where all that groups can go together. So they can be linked together. So because from here, I was looking for this for so long. I couldn't find because also when you find something that you are interested in, you don't have much information. So you try to go there. The other day, I was trying to find this community in Tipi Valley, because I want to be in contact with different communities as well, because I want to share how they live, what they do, whatever. and I got lost in there. They have a web page. Apparently it's not updated, don't go very often online. So I sent an email because I want to. What I did was I have a motorhome. I brought my motorhome there. I destroyed the motorhome in the forest, trying to find a place. I left the aerial behind, and I couldn't find it. So I didn't think, why there's not instead of being so many groups all Australia, just to at least one or two platforms where all that community can go in and can be linked together with Italy. That should make a really strong community in the beginning, because there's so many groups around doing. Maybe there's like 3 or 4 more groups around doing the same thing than here. That we are doing here, and we are not connected. So
there are some similar groups. They all have their own motives, own things. As Nigel indicated, sometimes it's linked to funding. It's one of those frustrations out there. People are very protective about lifestyle and money and things like that. And I don't blame people. The jobs and income can be really important. Those working in the sector can be quite.
Sometimes we don't need that money. If you are strong enough, money just a consequence. It's not. This is the first objective of a group, and I think it's wrong. I think money and
Yeah, but everybody's on there. This is the problem we have in this thing. People talk about transition, and just bringing it back. I had an idea once to have everybody come into a meeting and say whether they felt they're in transition or not, and tell us all the things you do and list it all out, and do this big survey about everything you do. So those with the kind of the ego-driven self. Yeah, it is, and loads of points, and all of these projects hang it up, and that person who walked in went, well, I don't really have anything, but I came here tonight. I wanted to then try and put the balance across and saying, every one of you is equal and in that position, but some people are not on the same part of their pathway as somebody else may be. Someone may have changed their lifestyle, they may have all their solar, water saving, everything, jobs in it, and they may be further down the journey. But what I found on allotments, this was chunking all over the place, but what I found on allotments is I can't tell the old guard how to garden. Yeah. I can't tell them, I'm a young man. If I come in there telling them you're doing it in a way which is not necessarily most efficient, why didn't you try this? They don't want to listen. So I found by showing them an alternative, just doing it sometimes, just doing it and letting them observe slowly over time, they started altering their behaviours and copying me, because I still had broad beans when theirs had all died. And that's what they wanted. They didn't care about my methods, they wanted the broad beans. But I aligned myself with their motives for a little bit in other things I do, and I suddenly found they started to alter. But I can't, although we all know dream-wise everybody works together and wants to do all this stuff, some of those people aren't ready to share. Some of them aren't ready to not be protective about money and stuff like that. I don't blame anybody. I think we definitely idealistically want to get beyond that. These shared unified platforms sound amazing. I think that would be great. I think we need to capture that ability to communicate beyond just a website.
Our part is that can I have a leaflet from your sorry.
No, that's perfect. Good.
Can I also take one of yours?
Yeah.
Sorry.
See,
I didn't bring many, so yes, I just didn't bring many, so they just
What works well for me, and I know this is old-fashioned in the age of tweets and so on, but when I get an email about an event or about a group, or when it comes to me, I find it's too hard work to have to go onto a website with 500 organisations listed on it, where everybody is on there, and it's just not going to happen. But when I get an email inviting me, for example, to this meeting, or inviting me to an event in the park, or inviting me, telling me about a repair cafe, which I've never heard of before, I always respond to them. I can get 2 or 3 of those, 5 of those a day. It's not a big deal. And usually one of those, I'll put it in my diary and I'll do it. And so I think that kind of very simple, proactive communication to let people know what kinds of things are happening. It's kind of a marketing exercise in a way, but rather than being profit-driven.
It needs to be multi-platform, Steve. It needs to be all of the
Sure.
above. It needs to be posters on walls, it needs to be community centres, emails, social media, ideally all of them.
Different things. So this is somebody's job. Now, if somebody's going to put the time in, of course, we have to, this is where money comes in, because it enables somebody to do that. But the beauty of, I say old-fashioned, I know, but the beauty about email for me, and I'm sure it's the same for other platforms, is I've got 50 people in my friends list. If I get one email, I send it to those 50. If they send it to 10 each, that's 500. And, that sort of, the spread is so quick. But it needs to come to me first for me to pay attention to it. I don't know that about other people, but I'm never going to be very good about. I must remember to log on to, along with all the 5,000 other websites I should remember to log on to find out what's going on. I need to be invited to things.
Yeah, but it's very much horses for courses.
I'm probably
Yeah, I mean,
Just going to jump in with Pat on that.
Yeah.
Patient on it. So
Yeah.
sorry about that.
No, it's all right. There's something as well about broadening it out. And I mean, the things haven't got any better. I mean, I think what transition and what the project have done is really great. But in the wider world, I mean, if you look at what's happening in terms of climate change and the way that that's, the way that that's building up and the impacts of austerity on people's lives. And I think there's something about how those things are all linked together. That working towards sustainability is really important. But the thing about who's around the table and how the things that we started doing that for haven't, there's a bigger system change that we're looking for. And so there's something about the communication that it's amongst the people who are working on all these projects. But I think what you said about diversity, there's groups working in different communities, and there's something about communicating there, but also projects which are working for social justice and for wider social change. And I think there's a role, if we're talking about getting funding, about arguing that bigger picture, about how the thing I liked about transition so much was that idea of working in local communities with local people about the things that are really important, and that being linked to the bigger things about sustainability and the kind of life that we need to be living to keep the planet going longer in a way that works for people. And that it isn't, those two things are really tightly involved together, and it's about also changing people's minds and seeing the links. And so I think there's something about the initiative that can be taken to link the issues that transition, that local change that's sustainable, with those struggles for people's lives, which are being impacted by austerity, because and climate change, they impact on the lives of poor people far more than they do on the lives of people with more money. So I think in terms of that communication, that proactively making the links with community groups and, you can kind of, I don't know, the Labour Party or the Green Party or, just seeing us as all working for the same things and all doing valuable things and how there's a conversation to have about how those things are all linked. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but it just seems that
I think if everybody acts local and thinks global, it'll make a lot of difference. If you dress your doorstep first, I think that does a lot.
And making that argument too, that making that argument in a big way, so that it's seen that this is a profoundly political thing to be doing, and it links with those other organisations and campaigns.
But specifically beyond political parties.
But I find that working with the Upfront Gardens project and developing it in Grangetown, we didn't talk about any of those big issues deliberately, but almost subconsciously deliberately, because I think basically there's all different sorts of ways to come at those big issues, and I think people feel overwhelmed and undercapacitated to talk about or do anything about those big issues. So basically what we tried to do was just simply talk about, well, okay, well, how about we do something in your garden and we'll get other people to do, other people want to do stuff in their garden and you'll talk to each other and, and get something going here socially in the street. And then, at the end of the project, which was a very, very short project in Grangetown, the group came together and started talking about that stuff. We didn't talk about that stuff.
It naturally weaves itself.
They talked about, oh yeah, I'm growing some food now. I'm really pleased that I got to know next door neighbour who they didn't actually talk to before. And I just think, yeah, it's great that you know, my husband, who spends all his time on the computer, is now going out and doing something. You know, it's just stuff like that. You know, it's just and then you know, and they talked about climate change. We can talk about it. You know, so it's sort of like there's different ways of coming at it. And if you sort of go on with a big climate,
You scare them, because they're not intellectually able to talk on that level, so they just end up running away and you lose them.
I agree absolutely with that. It's really important to work on all sorts of different levels and come in different ways. But I think Cardiff Transition as an organisation should be holding that big picture, not necessarily giving it to anybody when they don't want it, but still giving a chance for those that.
I think there's all sorts of ways to go on it. There's straightforward ways.
Yeah. It sounds like that's actually putting all of these ideas together is going to be a massive headache. I love it. I see a challenge coming up there.
But with if you're looking at a specific funding application and that's your aim at the moment, it can be broad as well as detailed. So you can look for the in-principle salary and what your outcomes are going to be, and that there will be a certain method in terms of certain events. But the actual how that then manifests might have some more flexibility, because that's going to emerge as you generate your contact through more occasions of kind of dialogue or an event to celebrate what all the different individuals and groups are doing, that will then roll on to inform the next aspect of this cohesion that you want to bring together as a citywide thing that's celebrating the localised efforts to help cross-inspire, you know, because you've already recognised that it's a diversity of different activities that's actually really going to engage individuals. We're not all going to go, oh, that's the ticket that we're all buying into. There's so many different ways that we'll be inspired as individuals. But as a transition movement, you can help put the ground there to fertilise those, as Michelle says, in a number of different ways. And that's where you might have some flexibility, even though you say in a funding application it's a salary, it's some events, and you know there's going to be a process to it. You won't have to describe absolutely every single thing from the outset.
I understand that. I think there's a large-scale schematic that working out the big plan of certain elements to it, and there's the funding we can get things in, we can get roles, we can do that kind of stuff. We can write those bits. But it sounds like there's actually some real challenges in creating a platform or platforms or small and large-scale things that people will find useful, that would actually require more conversation for those who are interested in that. Because maybe not everybody around the table is interested in that right this second, and sat around this table out of politeness.
Maybe a way to sort of consolidate things and to sort of establish need and evidence those for funding, but also is to create some sort of survey out or something, or to do some questions, and then you've got some written down, so you have to like patch it together from this video and like put it here, and you've got some, you kind of like frame questions so that they, you know, basically you're asking them about what people want this platform to do, and what transitions is what elements of transition are going to help you in your project, and then if it's framed as questions in a survey, you get hopefully everybody that's been here tonight repeating things and going away and thinking about things and then putting it down in writing, and also get a whole other load of people who weren't here tonight to put their thoughts down. So a survey monkey is really simple.
Yeah, it sounds like a straightforward thing.
There's the new General Data Protection Act. Comes in from the beginning of May. If you're putting a funding bid together, you better show awareness of that. It's part of the funding bid that we're going to comply with that in reporting our personal information.
We'll get advice from C2SC on.
Yeah.
Or whatever the appropriate.
It's not difficult, but you know, you need to do it.
No, we've looked at some of those things. I know Paul has looked at some of those issues or sticky things that are changing, rules change all the time. Yeah, no, anything will be looked at. It's more that, you know, obviously people have their names down. Consensus, you're happy for us to contact you again, evolving this plan. You know, if anyone doesn't, scribble it down on a piece of paper, don't say it now, scribble it on a piece of paper and hand it to one of us. To me, hand it to me. Not one of us, she's mine. But I would like to talk about this more, but it's not really why we're here. Partly is to connect. One is to say, thank you for that part. There is a chance to talk a bit more afterwards, but we've got, not quite sure how we're going to do this part, but it's like the treasury bit, and we're just going to say it publicly to everybody, and there's the normal stuff to do. So you want to?
Okay, there are a couple of things that we have to do in the AGM. We have to do a report on what we've been doing for the past year. We have to do a treasurer's report. Normally we do elections for the chair, secretary and treasurer, but we decided to put that off to the next board group meeting, which is only next week. So we're going to leave that for a bit of voting out, but we are going to do a report on what we did last year and our treasurer's report after that. Okay? So, Mike, would you like to do that?
I wrote down some
very small
So we did this year has been quite a year for transition activities. But the one big thing, or a couple of big things that we did do was we became a constituted group this time last year. So we are officially an unincorporated not-for-profit association. And I think in our what's the word? Constitution, that's the word. Yeah. I think the important part for me are that we want to be a participatory, non-hierarchical, open and transparent, and inclusive organisation. So part of the meeting tonight is very much in that way. We also now have insurance, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are an insured group as well, so we can do activities, insured. And I guess the main activities we've been doing for the last sort of 12 months, mapping, thinking about this event and that kind of thing. The website, we've updated that. We've been doing things like Orchard Cardiff, Fido was getting involved with that. There's been an event called Cardiff Soup, which you might have seen. We've been involved with that. That's hoping to restart.
Can you just very quickly tell everyone what it is, Cardiff Soup?
Yeah, so Cardiff Soup is an idea that started in the States, where you basically give £5 on the door. I think it's £5, but roughly £5. It's money on the door, and you get a bowl of soup, a bit of food, and you get to hear 3 or 4 community projects pitch, and they get the money on the door that's making the event.
Everyone votes.
We held 2 last year. I actually pitched at one of them, and I think you pitched them as well.
I did.
Yeah.
So basically, everyone votes.
Everyone votes,
and who one wins.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know some votes did that. Activist Cafe. There's been a few of those every 4th Wednesday of the month. That's a transition LinkedIn project as well. We're thinking about a library project, which again is kind of trying to create a shared online library. A lot of people, we alone have 200 books. Lewis does it.
We were left the private books by an environmental activist last time, and so I thought, well, it should be made public. So nobody owns the entire transition of them. So we're trying to put together an online catalogue so that people will be able to, fancy the books online. You can see what books we have, and then you can contact us and we can provide them. That's the idea. And once we got these 200 books, we thought, well, we could extend that. So all the books I have on environmental activism and awareness and science and stuff, that can all go to the library as well. And then when we're properly organised, we can invite you to catalogue your books.
Can we just quickly say on that, if anyone knows coding, if anyone knows anything on coding and setting up libraries online, we could do with some support on that.
And what we're looking at as an app, there's an app, you can catalogue like 100,000 books on us, so we're looking at that as well. Yeah. That's another project we're looking at.
Yes, so anybody who doesn't mind their books being borrowed by transitioners, one thought or another. Yeah. Well, we might lose a few, that's the trouble, but the only thing we want is an address, email address from the people who borrow. That's the idea of the present. So yeah, working on library.
There's not much more to say. I mean, we've been helping with apart from what we've just said. I think we did. No.
Do you cover all trade Cardiff?
Yeah, we've got Watch Cardiff, but I don't have any numbers for any of those things because they've all been quite disparate. But there's something that we need to do much more on with carry on those things. I think Friday does have the numbers for the new apples and stuff. She's collecting a number of volunteers.
Yeah.
That's something we've got to get that out in terms of logging out volunteer hours. Getting the reports and stuff. Yeah.
Indeed. As part of we have to do that for our insurance.
Yes, well, if we do get funding.
Just very quickly, what is the? You're going to hate me for saying this. What's the insurance going to cover? It's like just rough ballpark.
Have you not seen?
No, and just so everyone knows, in case they've got an activity that could go.
You know, the description is about that long.
Okay.
Of what it covers.
But it allows for like X amount of hours a month, doesn't it, of doing certain activities, just so we cover.
An average of 4 hours per month for volunteering. I think it is, or something. I can't remember exactly. There's an awful lot of paper.
So basically it opens up the opportunity, if you're not insured in your group and you're willing to comply with some like things we have to say for you to be able to do to come on insured, there's a potential we can help you out. There will be some rules we have to follow because we've got blanket insurance under Equals Tidy. But
as I remember it, the documents, the basic policy documents are available on Equals Tidy's website.
Okay, just quickly say on the... Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks very much.
Not I got now, but you got now.
So the Treasurer's report is really exciting because I had a report, I did it last year, no one really liked it, it wasn't that exciting, it's a few figures. And today I had an emergency, I did a lot of hatching projects, and one of the schools unfortunately dropped a lid on top of 2 of the eggs and cracked them, so I had to go on and emergency seal them up and that and exciting stuff. So I haven't bought my report, but the key thing for us is we have a bank account. On that bank account, we started last year with £377.67. You saw me challenging the internet earlier on this. And we end the year with that. Money has come in though. So actually, one of the awkward things is that the New Wales, we had a contract with them as a coordinator or mentor, and money came in through that to pay actually for my time. So there is an awkward conversation there. And I've moved that contract for my time into another organisation, so I didn't feel comfortable managing my money as such, you know what I mean? So that's now my contract personally has moved into another organisation. There's another treasurer, and we still have potentially money for the New Wales coordinators or mentors coming through Cardiff Transition. But that did equate to about over £6,000 worth of hours supporting community groups out there with environmental, gardening-based, horticultural-based, woodworking-based, skills-based learning and sharing, which is quite a lot of projects, if you want to think about it. We haven't just been operating in Cardiff, so as much as the group don't always know everything I've been involved in, the Cardiff Transition Plan has enabled us to work with the New Wales really well, successful evidence-based organisation doing climate change adaptation style projects, and it's enabled a huge amount of work to be done across South Wales really for myself, from Carmarthen all the way over to sort of the Rhine valleys to Rhine as well. So I believe Pat, are you still classed as a mentor? No, but there's potential for things like that. So we have opportunities. So in New Wales, there is still always looking for more mentors. The coordinators are being chosen now. We've got enough coordinators for the areas they want to cover. But if you've got a particular skill set around climate change adaptation or knowledge, there's a potential gap in New Wales, and you can contact them and potentially put it on there. If you need a host organisation to work through, then potentially Cardiff Transition, who is already on there that books, could be that host organisation. And I can explain more about that another time. But it is an opportunity. So we still have in our bank £377.63. That's positive. Yeah. Done.
Business to in helping Cardiff Transition in a set hands-on way to join the group. There's about 7 or 8 of us, I think. We could always do more. Sorry, usually in the cycle or 10 or something. It's not never no need to commit to this event. Now they just talk to us about
So not just core, if you feel like you have space that we can come and have a meeting in as well.
Yes.
Then we can move around, and that might give us an opportunity to allow you to be the theme and have an extra input. So maybe you don't want to join the core for 12 months, speak different, that's what I'm just doing here. Yeah. Maybe we can come to a space where you guys can come in for one meeting or something like that, not committing extra time to say, look, we'll come to that one, we will just share stuff and see what our input is for that. That would be amazing, right? I just think it's a different way of working, we've not done it before, but I'm just chucking it out there, so that would be exciting.
And then doing your own Cardiff, they're happy to process as well.
Yeah. So things like that, I think maybe that's where your organisations can be something and feel like you know, we can't go to 100 meetings. I used to try that, it burnt me out really quick. So maybe that's a way. Think about it, and please let us know if you think one meeting, even in a year, come to us, we'll talk, we'll chat, we'll share, and then we'll look at what can be done together.
Send an invitation, I suggest.
An email.
Your email is. No, because then, you know, yeah. Because I'm potentially interested if you had a little schedule of meetings and you know how long they last, and you know just you can feel it for the member.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for business. So now it's just to chat.
Yeah, if people want to talk about activity or projects, or we don't need to focus and have some understanding of what to do, but some of you might want to have a chat with someone around the table, please feel free to just do that. And we won't be coming on.
Can I make a suggestion? What I would love, I'm going to head off now, but I would love to get a little paragraph from everybody who's here. Is that an incredibly unrealistic? Yeah, or
just
I know it's too
Well, you can go through the survey when you do a survey.
Yeah. Oh,
You've got, like, you first you get your name and you're out, and then.
If you want to share something, share it, and I'll share it out. But maybe if we capture this, I'm not putting it on anyone, these are all volunteers. But maybe if we've got some information from the little walk around that happened, for those who are representing projects or organisations, not to say individually we're going to share all the stuff, but they're all in the room, and if we just have a recap, maybe we'll be able to send out an email just to have a recap of who was here, maybe what they said they were connected in, maybe how they want to...
That would be lovely, because I'd like to know where the pound shop is and where the repair cafe is, but I can't write it all down now.
Can one of you just quickly say something about the show and tell, just explain to everyone, in case we do it every 3 months, just so you...
Okay. Well, Paula's just mentioned that sometimes do events, something people said they want to do is be able to actually do a highlight of their project or other projects. And we have an event we've done in the past, Pat's organised many, where we have something like a show and tell, which is basically a few projects come together and just share. That's the life first minute.
The council have one coming up April, I think it is, at the days. Where we just put a stand up, we'll have some leaflets, we network with other organisations. It's I'm trying to think where it goes now.
Are you talking about the Cathays Fair or the homeless job? Are you talking about the Cathays Fair?
Not necessarily, it's just about, because we found, working with the different charities, just like what you said here, that people are not aware of other people that exist. So I'm sure it's set up by the council, and they run it. We went to the one in the town hall last year. But all we did was put up a stall, and we just met everybody else from their different stalls, talked about what we did, shared ideas, emails, and that was it, which was good. You know, because we got a lot from that, didn't we? We got a lot of networking contacts.
Cardiff Transition, when it started, used to run a monthly event. theme and people talking and a chance to, you know, you listen to somebody talk and then sit round tables and discuss it together. And I thought that was really useful. There were so many things you found out about through that. You know, and some of those were shown to us. We've got, you know, half a dozen organisations coming and talking to begin with, and then you could just talk about how it impacted on what you wanted to do. Or, you know,
Is there no one doing that kind of stuff at the moment?
No.
Anyone aware of anything we go along different projects or sharing?
Cardiff Uni runs a public uni, you can find it on Facebook. It's called Public Uni, they meet in the pub, somebody does a talk, you'll have a few beers and have a chat around it.
We've had a network like that as well in the past.
Used to be green drinks.
Green drinks are still going, let's say, so...
I was so disappointed that they weren't green when I went to the drink.
Great Cardiff thing, like we've got to do show time.
Okay, if there is a need for that and you speak it, as a core group, we have to discuss it and see if there's a potential.
Green drinks, it's
So, how would you like to see that happening again? If we